Hey Cal fans, and welcome back to this week's installment of the Football Film Study here on California Golden Blogs. This week we're talking about the ASU game, and in this video I want to focus especially on the defense, which hasn't put up the elite numbers that we might have expected heading into this season. In particular, Cal's secondary had a lot of trouble in coverage during this game, and so I'm going to go in depth into what was causing these problems. As for the secondary, let's start with this play. In this game, there were a few weird or unusual things going on with the coverage, and this is a play that definitely seems strange to me. The thing that's interesting is that it looks like some of the players were running 2-man while the rest are playing a zone cover 2, and as we'll see, these two coverages don't have compatible structures. Before the snap, we see that Cal's playing with 2 deep safeties, and as we run it forward, we see both Elijah Hicks and Josh Drayden running with their receivers on crossing routes. This should signal to us that we're looking at some kind of 2-man coverage, but when we look at Bynum, we see that he's definitely not playing the same assignment as Hicks. Here we can see that both of their wide receivers has taken inside releases, but while Hicks is locked onto his receiver, Bynum's passed his man off and is playing in the flat. Now, either one of these coverages alone could have taken care of this concept. Obviously, if they were playing 2-man across the board, then Bynum would have locked onto his receiver man-to-man, and he wouldn't have been as open as he was. A full-on zone look would have worked as well. For example, this would have been a very different play if Hicks would have played the same technique as Bynum. Check out down here at the bottom of the screen where Bynum's dropped to the 46-yard line and is positioned just inside the numbers. Now, imagine that Hicks is in that same spot but on the other side of the field. Now watch where the wide receiver catches the ball. Now we can see that if Hicks would have played the same basic zone drop as Bynum, that would have put him in position to either discourage this throw or to take it away completely. This means that either 2-man or a zone cover 2 could have covered this concept better than it was covered, but the mixed coverage that we actually ran can't, because when Bynum passes off his receiver to play a zone, the other DBs have all been run off by their man coverage assignments, and so there's no corresponding zone defender on the other side of the field to pick up that receiver. I don't know if this was a miscommunication or what, but this was the biggest coverage bust of the evening. Now let's look at this next play. Everyone will probably remember this because it should have been a huge completion for ASU on 3rd and 3, with the tight end sitting down completely unblocked over the ball. To some, this looked like a mistake by Evan Weaver here, but with good execution, ASU was going to complete this pass no matter what Weaver did. The real issue here is that Cal's blitzing both their strong safety and their outside linebacker off the edge, and that leaves Weaver and Anusium as the only 2 defenders who can possibly play coverage to this side. Meanwhile, ASU has 3 receivers, and so those 2 defenders cannot possibly cover them all. As we roll this play forward, we see that Anusium stays outside, where he can potentially get to this route in the flat. That leaves Weaver stuck in between 2 receivers, and so even if he would have stayed inside on the inside route over the ball, it just would have opened up a throw to the next receiver outside. The real problem here is the blitz call, which leaves Cal without enough defenders in coverage. Once again, it's hard to know where this mistake originated. It could have been mandated by the sidelines, or it could have been the result of a bad check by the secondary, but either way, it's up to the defensive coordinator to have his players ready to face this kind of formation on this kind of down and distance. And on the whole, we had a lot of problems when we brought blitzes like this on 3rd and medium to short. On this play, we're looking at something called an FIB set, where FIB stands for Formation into the Boundary. This label refers to the fact that ASU's placed their passing strength, or the side of the formation with the most receivers, into the short side of the field. We saw these kind of formations a ton against Ole Miss, and to some extent it looks like ASU was copying this aspect of their game plan, so this is an issue that we definitely need to get sorted out. These FIB sets are noteworthy because normally teams want to put their passing strength to the wide side of the field, not to the short side. The whole point of having multiple receivers to the same side is to be able to stretch the defense out horizontally or vertically, and by compressing receivers into a small space, that works against this goal. What teams are seizing on against us, though, is that we play coverage into the boundary differently from how we play it to the wide side of the field. For example, on this play, check out the coverage of these 2 DBs at the top of the screen. Notice how, when their receivers go vertical, they both run vertical with them, giving us 2 defenders to cover 2 receivers downfield. At the bottom of the screen, however, things are different. Notice how when this slot receiver runs vertical, Davis here doesn't stick with him. This is different from what we saw at the top of the screen, where both defenders locked onto their receivers. The limited space into the short side of the field is the reason for this difference. The idea here is that because there's less space down here, the cornerback can cover either of these receivers if they run vertical. This makes it less important to flood the deep coverage here because those two receivers won't be able to create much of a horizontal stretch. Instead, it's more important to flood the underneath coverage since any throw in this area will be really close to the quarterback and should be an easy throw for him. For example, the reason that we want Davis in underneath coverage here is in case one of these receivers runs out to the flat. From the alignment that we see him in right here, he'll easily be able to jump anything like this while Bynum can cover anything deep. Ole Miss found an effective way to attack this coverage though, and ASU learned from their game plan. As we saw, the cornerback's effectively responsible for either of these receivers if they run vertical. This means that when this inside receiver runs deep, the cornerback has to drop with him to defend the deep sidelines. The way that both Ole Miss and ASU then attacked this was by having the outside wide receiver hitch up underneath this route. As we've seen, the cornerback has to bail, and so he can't stop and come up on this route to defend it, opening up a nice, easy outside completion for the quarterback. This is something that the Bears are going to have to get figured out, or else they're going to see a lot more of these FIB sets as the season goes on. Alright, that's it for this video. For further discussion of defensive issues against ASU, including a look at why we had trouble containing their quarterback, check out patreon.com/Burke18. Otherwise, I'll see you here next week. And until then, go Bears!